The good news is that this is the only baseball game on the Super Cassette Vision. It's also the first game that we're seeing that it was not a launch title. The release dates are always fuzzy on these, but most people agree that the original release of Super Baseball was in September of 1994. And it's the original release because Epoch gave it a new title, box, and label, and sold it a second time as Kyojin-gun Hara Tatsunori no Super Baseball. Hara Tatsunori was a player for the Tokyo Giants, or Kyojin-gun, and Epoch got him to endorse their game. But the contents of that game were exactly the same, so I'm not going to be playing it a second time. And as you watch me play, you might notice something here. Super Baseball is effectively identical to Nintendo's Baseball. Another one of Nintendo's big hits from the early days of the Famicom. Famicom Baseball was released at the very end of 1983, and even more than Epoch's Super Mahjong, Super Baseball is just copying Nintendo's Baseball. There are several key differences, some of which come from the limitations of the Super Cassette Vision, and some seem to be due to Epoch's experience making baseball video games, but the inspiration couldn't be more clear. Super Baseball offers you two difficulty levels, Amateur and Pro. The difference between the two is that on Pro, the ball moves a bit faster, and more importantly, you have to handle the fielding. On Amateur, the game does the fielding for you. You'll still have to choose to throw it to certain bases, and a quirk of that is if the first baseman is away from the base and you choose to throw it to first base, he instantly teleports there. The controls are straightforward enough. Generally speaking, the left button is signaling that you want to do something involving a base, while the right button is the primary action for that inning, batting or pitching. So if you're batting and you press up and hit the left button, then whoever's on first base will try to steal second. Or if you're on defense and the ball's been hit, then pressing right and hitting the left button will throw to first base. Bunting is a little bit tricky because you have to press and hold the right button for just a moment and then release, almost timing it so that you're releasing during the swing. As for pitching, it's very similar to the formula that baseball set up. You can adjust the speed a bit by pressing up and down, and you can curve the ball by hitting left and right. All of these should be very familiar to anyone who's encountered a baseball video game, but keep in mind this is 1984 and there's only one prior example of something like this. One of the strangest things in the game is that the teams all have stats, though not actually unique stats. The way it works is that any batter with above a 300 batting average will hit the ball further, and anyone with an under 200 batting average loses some power when they connect. But the range of batting averages is identical for all the teams, so batters 3 and 4 will always be above 300. On top of that, if the pitcher has to be relieved for some reason, something that you don't directly control, then for the remainder of that inning, all batters are treated as though they have a batting average 100 lower than their actual number. It's a little bit weird, and it's an obvious compromise, but it's something that Nintendo didn't have in their baseball. There are 26 different teams available for you, and when you start the game up, you can press left and right to choose what letter team you're playing as. Many of the letters have a real-world counterpart, and the uniform color will be set based on that. A few of them, like Team X, which I'm playing as, just use whatever they felt like. One downgrade from Nintendo's baseball that you'll notice is that the scoreboard you see on the field isn't active, and that's due to the lower resolution of the cassette vision. Instead, between innings, you get a little score block that appears all by itself. They didn't bother jazzing that up at all. Since Super Baseball is a game that offers a two-player mode, this marks the first cassette vision game where two people can go head-to-head. In Super Golf, everyone had to wait their turn, which means this is the game that's actually going to give that second-player controller a workout. There's not much more to Super Baseball than this. It is, after all, a baseball game. Comparing it to Nintendo's baseball, I think Epoch comes out slightly ahead. The gameplay in Super Baseball feels rough, but it also feels rough in Nintendo's baseball. Epoch's version lacks some of the visual flair of Nintendo's, but it has better looking sprites. I think what it really comes down to for me is that the pitching is better in Epoch's Super Baseball. It feels like you've got a lot more control and options of what to do. So if I was going to play one of these, it would be Epoch's. But I'm not going to play either one of these. Epoch's Super Baseball might be better, but it's still a very primitive baseball game.